I'm going to share the screen. This is screen one. I'm going to share this. Okay, we are back recording again. And now what we're going to do is we're going to do part 2F. In urban footprint, create a transportation map of transit stops, bicycle and pedestrian infrastructure, vehicle crashes. Create and submit a map with a legend and a title. Okay, so let's go ahead and do that. In order to create a map of transportation, so we want to do transit stops. That'll be kind of the first thing that we want to look at. Before I do that, I want to zoom out and turn on the context area land use. All right. So now this shows you like what the land use is for the county around us. And you can kind of see where our study area is. And keep in mind that land use around us is at the census block level. The land use within our study area is actually at the parcel level, right? That was how we set it up. Because remember, at the county level, you can't use parcel level data; it's too big. If your site is within a city, then you can use parcel level data. The issue is that, believe it or not, this is not in the city of West Palm Beach. The city of West Palm Beach boundary stops at Lake Okeechobee, and over here, I think by Australian. So this is what they call unincorporated Palm Beach County. So it's not in the city. So what I asked in part 2F is to create a transportation map of transit stops. I just want to review one thing that we did last time. If you go back to part 1, you'll recall this. In your base canvas, if you click on your base canvas and you go to, remember your data tables down here, and you can see all the columns of data that are in here that represent that base canvas, and the column data you can select here. And so let's say I want to go look for transportation. Well, here I see intersection density, population, households, right? I could change this and I could look at these different data points. This is what you did for part 1, right? Dwelling units, right? And it changes the map based on the data that we're looking at, right? Employment, right? And it shows all these different things. Well, where's transportation? Okay. Does anybody remember where transportation is? I don't see any transportation stuff here. Does anybody remember where I find transportation? Up here. Okay. So I just want to remind you, some of the data is in your base canvas under the column data. Okay. So there's 2 places you could look for data in urban footprint. One is here, but if it's not there, then you go to the add layer button. And when you go to the add layer button, you have the layer manager. And in this layer manager, you have a lot of data, a ton of data, pre-packaged data that urban footprint collects for you and constantly uploads data. So I said transit stops. So there's a couple we can navigate through and look at transport and circulation and click on the drop down button. And then I can say, okay, transportation, transit stops. Okay. Oh, public transit stops as of May, or lines as of May 29, stops as of May 29, public transit stops here. This might be an older layer and they updated it. So they said as of May 29. The other thing you could do is just search for layer, right? You could do transit stops and it comes up with 2. They don't have a date on this. You can click on it and it'll tell you it was updated on October 7th of 2019. So this is newer. It was updated May 29, 2021. So I go ahead and use the newer data, click the plus button, and then just click close. And this is so easy that now what we're going to do, I'm going to go back to my land use map as the base map, right? Or I can even turn off my base map if I wanted to and just leave my project area, and I could turn on the public transit stops, right? So there we go. Now we have all the public transit stops like in my study area and around my study area. I mean, it actually brings it all in for the whole region, for the, I believe, the whole county. So I can zoom in, right? And so I said to create a map of transit stops and bicycle and pedestrian infrastructure. Okay, so now I'm going to click on add, and I got to look for a layer called bicycle and pedestrian infrastructure. So I'm going to do bicycle. Okay, bicycle and pedestrian, bicycle lanes. Okay, let's see what the differences are, right? You can click on it. It says this data contains bike and ped paths sourced by OpenStreetMap, which is free, editable map of the whole world that's being built by volunteers, largely from scratch and released with open content license. Last updated April of 2021. And it's got both bicycle and pedestrian data. Okay, now again, this is an OpenStreetMap. It's created by volunteers. It may be accurate, it may not be accurate, right? So I just want you to be aware of that. So I go ahead and add that. And let's take a look at what the difference is. This is a data layer created in May of 2019. It says the bike lane feature class shows designated bike lanes for all non-limited access highways, including bike segments derived from event mapping feature 216. I don't really know what that means. Characteristic bike LNCD from the FDOT roadway characteristics inventory data. So the data comes from the Florida Department of Transportation, but it's just bicycle data. So why not add that one, right? You can add multiple layers of data on the same map. So go ahead and add that. And now those layers are here, but you won't see those layers until you click the eyeball button and turn them on, right? So now when we click that first one, we could see some data. When we click on the second one, we could see more data, right? So now all of a sudden we see transit maps, we see the FDOT bike lane data, right, which is shown in orange, and then we have the OpenStreetMap data, which is shown in green. And then the last thing I said is to add vehicle crashes. So go back to the add plus data, go into the layer manager, and we'll type in the word crash. Vehicle crashes. Now they're a bit old. This data is from 2015. I'm gonna go ahead and add that data. Also want to point out though, right? You could, if you had an updated layer of data, right? Like let's say we can go to the FDOT, Florida Department of Transportation website and get more updated vehicle crash data, let's say for 2018 or 2019 or 2020. We could download that layer as a shapefile and upload that layer here, right? So you're not limited to the data that's in this layer manager. This is just the prepackaged data. So like if I wanted to go to FDOT, you know, FDOT vehicle crash GIS data, FDOT has like a whole website where, you know, you could, they call it FARS, fatality analysis reporting system. There's the Florida Highway Safety Motor Vehicle Crash. There's the dashboard. I'm not an expert on crash data. Eric Dumbaugh does a lot more of that kind of work than I do. But, you know, you can, my point is you can kind of download any GIS data you want and upload it into Urban Footprint, right? Which makes it a really interchangeable, versatile program, right? Just like S3, it's interchangeable, it's versatile. So I'm going to just use the prepackaged data, and that's all I'm asking you to do in this class. I'm not asking you to go find external data. I do want to point out though that the vehicle crash data, you know, is old, right? 2015 is now a bit old, and that data came in as circles, right? Now, this is kind of a busy looking map here. And, you know, if I were to, you know, I'll edit the symbology, I have a hard time seeing those circles, especially with some of the other data. So what I might do is I might edit this symbology, and rather than have it a hollow circle with a red outline, I might just fill that in as a yellow circle or a black circle. See what, see what makes more sense, right? Or a red, red circle, right? And you could pick like different radius. So maybe I'll bump that up a little bit. And then let's say I'll save that there. So those are my vehicle crashes. My transit stops, I can click on that layer and maybe I can change the transit stops. And this differentiates between tram, railway, and bus, right? So if we go up to over here downtown, we can see there's bus stops, but like the rail stop, which is hard to see because it's the same size. Like I can edit that symbology. Maybe I'll make those larger. Right now you can see these are the rail stops in purple, right? And the bus stops are in gray. So if I go back to my site, having a 10-point radius. Let's see, my computer just froze on me a little bit. Let's go. Okay, I'm gonna wait. Sometimes, like I had mentioned earlier, because this program is operating on a server in the cloud, there could be delays. And so you experience things like this. You know what? It says, can you wait for it to become or exit the page? I'm going to show you something kind of cool. Let's say I exit the page. All right. Now, if I go back to Urban Footprint, right, presumably the program just kind of crashed on me. So now I go back in, I log back in. So while connecting to the server can have its downside, like when it crashes like that, the upside is that generally you don't ever lose your data, right? Because it saved the most recent thing I did, which was making the vehicle crashes large red circles. It didn't save, for some reason, it didn't save, what I did to the transit stops. But, again, you could edit the symbology. Let's say I make the transit stops. Maybe I make them green. And maybe I make them a little bit larger, maybe not quite as big as the other ones, and I'll save that. Okay, so I'm gonna pick a brighter green. There we go. So now I just exit this mode, right? And so now I could do a couple things, right? So for this assignment, I said, create a transportation map of transit stops, bicycle infrastructure, vehicle crashes, and create and submit a map with a legend. Well, transportation, you want to see how your site interacts with areas around you. So if I zoom in like this, it's not going to help me that much, right? So I want to zoom out a little bit and see like, how does my site fit in, to the surrounding neighborhoods? So I'm going to create a map like that. I could turn these layers off and just do a map of bike lanes, right? Or a map of bike and pedestrian infrastructure, or turn those off and create a map of just transit stops, or turn that off and just have a map of vehicle crashes, right? But I actually would like to make one map with all of that information. So I'm going to turn all of those layers on, and I'm going to go create. I'm going to export this map. I clicking the export button. And I think if you might recall, I recommended using the 11x17 one because it makes the legend a little bit smaller in relationship to the map, which I personally like. You can still save this and import it onto an 8.5x11 if you want, but I think the scaling of the legend to the map is better. And but that's a preference thing. You could zoom in and zoom out. Like maybe I might want to show like my site in the context of the airport, you know, military trail here, downtown West Palm Beach, right? So I'm going to create a map of that scale. And then I'm going to go ahead and just export that map. And when it's done, it will notify me and I download that map, right? So that's basically what you need to do for part 2F. So why don't I go ahead and stop that recording?